Hi, this is Mark Victor Hansen. I want to first quickly introduce you to myself and say thank you for listening to both myself and Dr. Brian Carpenter today. A quick introduction of myself would be simply to say that I've been very fortunate to co-author the #1 New York Times bestseller that's been on the list as we do this now for over 70 weeks, called Chicken Soup for the Soul. We've got another great bestseller called Aladdin, and I'm just extremely thankful. Simultaneous to all that, I'm doing a speaking business where I talk to about 250,000 people a year, and then the thing that has just wowed my heart in addition to those two is this little Enrich international business, which in my group is called the V Vision Group International Inc., and we've gone from nowhere in 2 years to 3,000 people and doing about $2 million a year, and my goal is by 1999 to have 100,000 in our V Vision Group International, which brings me to introducing a man to let him introduce himself, and that is to say that I'm in Edmonton, Canada right this minute, and I'm with a guy who I met at the Star Trip, which with Enrich, you win a Star Trip somewhere, either in the Caribbean cruise or this last one was a trip to Hawaii, and we sat at dinner, and this guy just absolutely wowed me. I pulled out my 3x5 cards. I started taking notes. He is one of the most eminent thinkers on how to get into high lifelong health that I know, and with that, Brian Carpenter, would you introduce yourself, please?
Well, thanks, Mark. It's a real pleasure to have somebody of your energy next to me. When I met you in Hawaii and started talking and you were writing all those 3x5 cards, you did, I don't think I ate for an hour, but I enjoyed it. And from that, we've got this little meeting going on here, and I just look forward to having you interview me and get the same information across. So,
take us through a thumbnail sketch of your background, please.
First, about almost 30 years ago, animal science nutrition, and then that was my undergraduate degree, and then from there I went on and got a doctor of veterinary medicine and practiced with my own veterinary hospital. I had 10,000 patients, so I did lots and lots of surgery. I love practicing veterinary medicine, but after 7 years of huge volume of surgery, doing endocrinology, orthopedic work, I did cataract surgery, spinal surgery, et cetera, on many, many species of animals. You learn a lot about disease, and then I wanted to learn more about health. And from there, I left practice and got studying water purification technologies with the idea that water is your body's tool to detoxify, and we can talk about that. But I got basically traveling around the world and got very, very, very excited about health, because you see at a cellular level, if you're healthy, you can't be ill. So you can either treat the diseases with drugs that treat the symptoms and don't get at the cause, actually cause further disease, or better yet, we can get all the cells of your body healthy, and if they're healthy, you can't be ill. Now, it's about that simple. So it's easier to get healthy than it is to treat disease with chronic diseases.
Before we do that, and I want to hit every one of those topics because they're all hot and salient and information-laden. The people that are going to listen to this are going to have their lives positively changed now and forever. Let's finish up saying what kind of clinic you have here in Edmonton, because I'm going to go through it as soon as we finish here. That just wows me. And number two, what happened in your own Enrich business?
Well, my clinic is, I use only natural products. I have over 1,000 products in my clinic, mostly herbal formulas. But my clinic, what I do is I coach people how to regain control. And
regain control
of their health. And that means they can be basically as far as told that they're going to be dead in 2 weeks. And if they regain control of their health, make massive changes in their life, make changes that will detoxify their body, high-level cellular nutrition that functions at a cellular level, the body will heal itself oftentimes. It's amazing.
Tell me about your Enrich business, just in a thumbnail.
I got started with Enrich, and to be quite honest with you, I was a little skeptical about network marketing because I'm a bit of a conventional, I own companies and run a conventional practice, as it were. I had done some networking with a very, very nice company, but when I got working with Enrich, my upline sponsors are very thorough in constantly following up and telling me how it's going. So long story short, I spent a year evaluating Enrich before I really got involved, and I wish I hadn't, because now that I've been involved, I trust the company every month more and more and more. So my Enrich business for me personally, what it does for me, and I love it, it allows me to duplicate myself outside of the clinic. When I'm in my clinic, as much as I love it, I'm working with one person at a time. And then you can, basically you peak out and you can only work so many hours and you start to run out of hours, whereas the geometric progression of talking to people and training, Enrich is a vehicle to turn back the tide. See, there's a big change going on in North America. The medical industry is collapsing. It must be replaced by solid quality health. And Enrich is a vehicle to get to that, because Enrich allows us to geometrically quickly move to the communication age and train people and duplicate geometrically, not linearly. And so it allows me, I've got 1,000 people in my organization with Enrich, and I don't have a 1 day a week average to work on Enrich because I'm so busy with what I do in my clinic. But I love Enrich for that vehicle.
On the way over here, you said that one of the things that would leverage you and leverage me is in your car, you spend all your time training. Talk to that, because that's what this is for everyone that's listening.
Exactly. That's why I was so excited when we talked about doing an audio cassette. But for me, and I think a lot of other people, time. There's only so many hours in a day or minutes. When you're in your car, you can sit there and play it over and over and over.
Until you get it. Spaced repetition learning.
Yes, exactly. And
it's the best way to go.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get into the heart of the matter. Tell me about health versus disease.
Well, you know what's really exciting, talking about what people can do in their cars, listening to this audio cassette or wherever they listen. They can take back control and get health. And if you have health at a cellular level, if a cell is healthy, it can't be diseased. Now, what is disease? Let's talk about that. To me, disease is just a man-made classification system of cellular dysfunction, so that the medical industry can follow protocol, which means that they know which drugs to use to treat the symptoms. And the symptoms are treated but not the cause. And that's the key. So with health, you're getting at the cause. With drugs, you're quite often, with chronic disease especially, you're just treating the symptoms, not getting at the cause. And what's happening to us, the drugs are not only causing side effects, they drive toxins deeper to come back later and later. As an example, if you have a child with a cough, you don't stop that cough with codeine, because the body's smart. The body's trying to detoxify those toxins out of the lungs by coughing. When you stop the cough, everybody's happy, but they don't understand. They've driven the toxins deeper to come back as asthma or emphysema later on in life.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, talk about how to create a healthy cell, because what you taught me when we were in Hawaii is that your cells change at 7 million a second. Your body has 250 billion cells. 250 billion cells.
Excellent.
And a 250 cells.
Yes.
I'm a good student.
Yeah, you remember.
And I'm a fast study. And what happens is that at any given instant, the law of polarity says we're either regenerating or degenerating. Talk to that, please.
Exactly. So what we're talking about, roughly 250. The average adult, for people that want to count cells, and they've done this, you're roughly 250 billion cells. Now, you're getting 7 million cells a second new, and old ones are being replaced. Let's talk about a liver. About every 5 weeks you get a brand new liver, because the cells are replaced. The ones going in are healthier than the ones coming out if you're regenerating. So you see, you can regenerate, not just degenerate.
But you told me that everybody is toxic because of the air, the water, and the food that we're taking in.
Right.
And that herbs do a marvelous thing because they're the only thing that can detox. If you're eating the best food, you can't detox at cellular level.
Okay, that's one of the keys, and that's why herbology. To get healthy, you have to do 4 things. You have to detoxify the cells.
Got it.
And we'll talk about why. Then you have to have high-level cellular nutrition that is effective at a cellular level. Then you have to have the weakest organs in your body healing first.
You're
only as strong as your weakest link, correct. And you have to have stress control. You have to be in control and be able to handle stress. The best way to handle stress is knowledge. Once you understand how much control you have, you know, if I could give you my 30 years of experience and just hand it to you, you'd bust out laughing, because you'd know you'd have control of your health for the rest of your life, and you'd enjoy it. You wouldn't be a hypochondriac. You wouldn't worry about it. You would know the laws, and you would just follow them, and you would earn your health. So those are the things we want to talk about specifically, is why detoxification first. But you had mentioned herbology and herbs, and why. Well, herbs are the only vehicle to detoxify cells in animals. You have to detoxify to get cellular health first, and herbs are the vehicle to do that.
Now, what you told me was the reason we got to detox the cell is because we got 3,000 enzymes. Yeah. And the 3,000 enzymes can't go to work until the cell's detoxed.
Exactly. See, now we say in 1996 that we have 3,000 enzymes. 2 years ago, it was 1,400. You see, so we keep learning. We're doubling every 2 years our knowledge base. But yes, you're right. There's 3,000 today. We know of 3,000. There's obviously many more that we'll learn about. But the point being that every metabolic function in your body runs through an enzyme. You can't digest your food
without an enzyme.
Without an enzyme.
How do we know when
You'd
we're
starve to
detoxed?
death without enzymes because food that's in your stomach is outside your body. It's in a tube going through, open on both ends. Really, it's a elaborate tube. So until you can actually digest your food, it's of no use to you. So we need enzymes, and you know what? Toxins block enzyme pathways.
How do we know when we're detoxed?
Well,
Is it because we're going to feel healthy?
well, yes. Well, first of all, when you're detoxed, it's all degrees of, Mark. You're not toxic or clean. You'll never get perfectly clean. So it's degrees of. It's a continuum. So how do we know when we're detoxed enough? Because our cells start to function properly. Because you see, if an enzyme is blocked by a toxin, the next thing that we need is vitamins and minerals. Vitamins and minerals are cofactors to make enzymes function. That's why we got into so much mega vitamin therapy. We were basically using a 13-pound maul when a little tack hammer would have done. All you need...
And that causes more toxicity.
Well, it can. Yes, you can. I mean, everything in moderation, everything in balance. You can get too much vitamin A. Definitely you can. So what we want to do now is we want to detoxify the cells of the body using herbs so that the enzymes will function. Now the vitamins and minerals will work, and you won't be so frustrated saying, I'm taking vitamins and minerals, I'm trying to eat properly, and yet I'm still tired. I'm still frustrated. I haven't got the energy I did 20 years ago. So you have to get the toxins out first, and that's where we get to Enrich, because that's the vehicle, that's the first vehicle. You know what herbs also do? They provide the nutrition. So they provide the first two things we need, the detoxification and the nutrition. Now, the next thing is you have to work on the weakest organ first.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, Dr. Jensen, he's a iridologist, an older fellow in California.
Bernard Jensen. Brilliant gentleman.
Fantastic. I have all of his books. I've read every one of them, and my daughter's training in iridology, and I just love some of the things that he has taught us and taught myself. I just love it. But at any rate, Bernard says 90% of all disease starts in the large intestine. Now that's a lot. Now he might be wrong. It might be only 89. But I'm 50 years old now, and I know it's pretty high. So the large intestine is the first thing that everybody needs to accommodate.
It's the first thing that breaks down, and the last thing people look at.
We have models around the world, when you do epidemiology and go and look at other tribes and civilizations that have no colon cancer, Mark. None. Never recorded. But they have lots and lots and lots of fiber in their diet, and they don't have the toxins that we have to put up with from our food chain and all of that. So the large intestine is a key organ for everybody to start. So if you don't know, although I might make this statement, I think most people understand, if they think about it, which organ systems have gone awry over the years. But at any rate, fiber is the key, and as an example with Enrich, when Enrich brought out that product called Live Fiber, I said to my upline sponsor, I says, that'll be the #1 product in the company. And I was wrong. It's #2. It's still classic tea for the large intestine is #1. So you see,
and there have been people that become presidential just selling the Nature's Tea, which is amazing to me.
Nature's Tea and Live Fiber, because you see, you need the fiber, but the fiber, the Live Fiber has 29 herbs in there, not only for increasing the mobility of the intestinal tract, but those 29 herbs are there to pull toxins out of the colon and nourish the colon to get it healthier. And there's
so it's like a sponge and a scrub brush at the same time, and a roto-rooter, and we call it colon blow.
Right on, yeah, exactly. But you see, there's a cellular intelligence in your body, and your body will not detoxify if you have a toxic colon, because you auto-intoxicate. When you're constipated, and most of us are, most of us don't even have colons. We
have storage places.
Exactly. Every species on the planet, I've worked with all of these animals and everything, and they have parasites and worms. Every one of them. Horses, cattle, sheep, pigs, dogs, cats, all worms. Soon as we're people, we put clothes on, we don't even have a colon, let alone worms. And most of us have worms too. We could talk about that a little later on too. Parasites. Call them parasites. But the colon is the key organ to start with. So if people have eczema and psoriasis, as an example, rather than treating the skin topically, you always clean from the inside out. So you always start, in fact, we can go into that, Herring's Law, is you always start from the inside out. And what happens is you get your large intestine healthy and moving, and then you do not auto-intoxicate. If you have diverticulum and coating, your intestinal tract can be moving every day what you think might be properly, and you're still constipated. By that, you're not evacuating and cleaning your colon every day. So constipation, roughly 85% of people are constipated because our colons don't clean out all of the time. So what happens to us is we actually auto-intoxicate. We reabsorb our own poisons, and you can actually start to get, it's called dysbiosis. You actually get the wrong kind of parasites and bacteria and yeast growing in your colon because your intestinal tract good bacteria are down. I might talk about that for a minute because it's one of the keys of the large intestine. To be healthy, an adult human being needs 2 pounds of good bacteria in their intestinal tract to be healthy. 2 pounds, that's, I don't know how many trillion, but they're the good ones, lactobacillus and bifidus and that kind of, they're the good ones. And you know what? In our society, with the overuse of antibiotics, kills the good bacteria in the intestinal tract because it kills good bacteria and bad bacteria, okay? So that's the number one cause. Birth control pills is another. Chlorinated tap water is the next biggest one after antibiotics. When we drink chlorinated tap water, the chlorine in the taps is there to kill bacteria. You can actually smell it in the spring in this city, at least. And when you drink that, you're killing the microflora in your intestinal tract. So I advise every single one of the people that I talk with and coach to get on purified water. Now, a lot of people get upset and say, oh, well, our water's safe and it meets drinking water standards, etc. That is an economic drinking standard. The point being, Mark, I don't think you'd want to get your wallet out and start paying for absolutely pure water delivered to your house to flush your toilets and irrigate your lawns. We wouldn't want to. So what happens is we need to take the water as safe as a municipality can make billions and billions and billions of gallons of water for us. And then it is our responsibility to purify it because it is not healthy drinking water. So you just simply get a charcoal filter. Enrich has an excellent one. If you want to go up higher, you can go into reverse osmosis, which is a membrane technology, which is excellent at removing just about everything from water. The point being, though, with that technology, you have to have a TDS meter, a little light, and you have to change the membrane because it degenerates. And then the final one, if you're out in the country, is distillation. And I've sold distillers all over the world, and I still own a water company. I believe in water because water is your body's tool to detoxify. You can't get rid of one molecule of toxins from your body without it being in an aqueous phase from the 4 organs of excretion. So water's your body's tool to detoxify. And you know, you had mentioned earlier about air, food, and water. That's the source of our toxins, air, food, and water. Out of the 3 of them, air, you can get an air purifier, a HEPA filter in your bedroom, especially with asthmatics, that type of thing. Plants are excellent, but and I in this country, we don't have much of an air problem. When you get into food, you open up a huge can of worms, and it becomes difficult to coach somebody a lifestyle change on diet. But we can talk about, most of us should move away from meat and towards more vegetables generally. I'm not talking about being a vegetarian. I'm talking about control of your toxin burden into you because meat has more toxins than plants.
Correct. And the more fresh fruits and vegetables we get, the better off we're going to be ingrained.
Exactly. And organic. Exactly. Because organic, you know, there's been studies done about how many more minerals per gram an organic plant has than a non-organic, and on and on. So our whole food...
It'd be one of your goals, like we grow our own fresh fruits and vegetables, and why not set it as a goal? I mean, it's a high, lofty, inspired goal.
I have my own greenhouse, and I grow my own plants from seeds and then put them out in the garden, and I know they're organic. And then getting back to water, so we got air, food, and water. Out of those 3, water is the only one that you can absolutely change immediately for everyone in the family immediately without behavioral modification. Because we can have nice tasting water in our homes that's absolutely pure. So that's the first step for every family, is to get pure water, because you can't escape the benefits. In other words, you're drinking it, you're making your soup, you're cooking your pasta in purified water. That now you've only got air and food coming at you.
Well, let's just stay with water a second.
Right.
The other thing that you and I would talk about, and we've got purified water here that we're drinking, is that everybody's got to drink more water, less coffee, less tea, other than we're talking about nature's tea here, but we're talking about less sugared water that is deleterious to your kidneys and livers. They have a tough time handling all this junk.
I could tell you a story about my dad, and I hope he listens to this cassette. I took a distiller over because my mom wanted one, and she had a little bit of arthritis, and I knew it would help her. And I took a distiller over to the house, and I was putting it in, and Dad says, we really don't need one. And I'm giving them a very expensive stainless steel water distiller and putting it in. Dad says, we really don't need one. I says, Dad, you don't, but Mom does, you see, because Dad didn't like water. He says, I don't even drink water. He drank, just like you said, everything else but coffee, tea, everything but water. Because you see, he didn't trust water from the tap. His body didn't like it. Long story short, my dad now has his own jug of purified water at the house, and it's his jug, and he drinks water like crazy now and has for years, and it's made a huge impact in his health.
Well, I insist on it at my home as we've talked, and also in my offices. Sure. Can't do it otherwise.
So there you go. So there's pure water.
Well, we started with the health versus disease. We talked a little bit about the cells. Talk to me about the North American medical industry model.
Well, in North America, the medical model is, it's the last area in the world where drugs and the pharmaceutical industry runs the medical industry. So the pharmaceutical industry in North America is $940 billion. They pay the grad students at the university. They teach the doctors how to teach other doctors, etc. So the medical industry has had an experiment, we could call it, for 100 years. Okay, so for thousands of years we used herbs on billions of people, and then for 100 years we've used drugs. Now, drugs aren't all bad. The medical industry in North America, as I see it, is the best in the world at intensive care, at trauma care, at diagnostic ability, microsurgery, all this. They're the best in the world. With the equipment they have, the training they have, they're the best in the world. But they're not adequate in two things: health and nutrition. A Stanford research study a couple of years back said the average MD has 4 hours of nutritional training in a lifetime. I have 4 years, Mark. I've been paid as a consultant, as a nutritionist, and I don't know very much about nutrition. Because you see, the older we get, the more we understand, and our egos get calmed down a little bit, and we get humble in the face of nature. And as a buddy of mine said, if you're spiritual at all, and he is very spiritual, a nice guy, he says God doesn't make any junk. So there's no junk there, and nature and biology is so complex that we're looking at medicine today in 1995. What are we going to think in 100 more years? What are we going to think about chemo and radiation in 100 years? Just think about that.
How terribly ignorant we were.
Yes. Just like when I look back 100 years ago at bloodletting. You see, so we learn, and when we get egotistical and arrogant, as I think medicine has, and I think most of my doctor friends agree, that they've got a little off base, and they've gone where they say we're smart and the body's dumb. That's totally wrong. The body's always smart, and I'm dumb relative to infinite knowledge of nature. So in the medical industry, they have used drugs to treat the symptoms, not the cause. And those drugs, especially the ones used chronically, cause further disease, not side effects. And that is a science called homotoxicology, and how it works, and progressive and regressive varication, etc., etc. The Germans have it all laid out in a scientific way. So we, as individuals, we have control over our health. So every individual, that's the nice part, every one of us has control over our health. And so with control over our health, we can choose to go into health, and it is our responsibility, but it's not a burden. In my clinic, I train my clients to study I teach them how they're going to get healthy, and then they enjoy it and they love it. Because it's my experience working with thousands of clients that unless you love getting healthy, you're only human, and you're not going to do it for more than 30 or 60 days. Because you're not going to do it for me. You're going to do it for yourself. And all people really ask is they just want the information of how to go and get healthy. And you know what? They have control to earn their own health. Every individual has control over their own health.
And all they got to do is get habituated to it in 30 to 60 to 90 days, whatever
exactly.
it takes.
And once they start to see that they're only human, and they have to heal if they follow the laws, they have to heal because they're cellular. Now, we had talked over on the way in from the airport, we talked about genetics and predisposition, and we're talking about familial versus genetic and that kind of thing. Generally speaking, most people have control over their health to the point that they can be clinically normal. Now, some people have weaker constitutions than, say, George Burns does. You know, he has tremendous genetics and stayed healthy for 100 years.
He's also called a health retrobate. Somebody, when they asked him, they said, George, what does your doctor say about the fact that you have 10 martinis a day and 3 stogies, or vice versa? And he says, my doctor died 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we could talk about that too. So we need our doctors for what they're extremely good at, and we also have to take charge of our own health and get cellular health. And if you get cellular health, you won't have chronic disease. 85% of all diseases, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, are totally preventable. So start early, detoxify, and you only have degrees of health If you say you're healthy, you should really preface that and say, I am clinically healthy. You're subclinically not healthy, because it's degrees of health, isn't it?
Exactly.
And what you feel is just the tip of the iceberg, to use a poor analogy, but just the top. So what I do is I try and coach people how to get subclinical health, to get their immune systems healthy, to get high level energy, to get quality of life, to have lots of energy every day, to get out of bed and feel,
I say let's wake up and feel like Tarzan or Tarzette every day, so you beat in your chest and bounce into the world.
Exactly. I'm just almost 50. A couple more months I'll be 50. When I was 39, I thought I was okay. And I had a world-class health professional. I had gone there for advice, and he says, well, why don't you listen? And so I started listening. And he taught me that, I told him that I'd never been clinically ill, and I hadn't been, and I didn't think I was. And he showed me where I was subclinically a wreck, mostly my large intestine, like most people's. And so he coached me how to get healthy, and he changed my life more than any human being I've ever met, because he took the time to teach me how to take control back in my hands, and I loved it.
And that's what you're trying to do for everyone that's listening, and everyone who comes to your clinic, and everyone who gets in your Enrich group. Tell me about the 4 healing principles.
Well, we've touched on some of them. First of all, the number one law, I've been trained all over the world by some of the best people. Every one of them would agree that control rests with the client, not with the doctor.
Physician.
So we should be coaches when we're trying to teach people how to get healthy. We shouldn't be telling them and arrogantly just saying you have no advice. Like 20, 30 years ago, doctors used to write prescriptions in Latin, you took it to the pharmacist, and neither one of them would tell you what it was, and if you asked, they looked at you like you had no business asking. Well, we've come a long ways, so we need to go a lot further. We have to take back control, and control rests with a person. Now, as soon as you take back control, that means your mind runs your body in unison, and we are holistic. So to be healthy, you have to be spiritually, emotionally, socially, and physically healthy. I have trouble coaching people into physical health, Mark, if they're emotionally beat up. And I thank you for Chicken Soup for the Soul, because that's what we need, because a lot of us are emotionally weak. We don't think we're worth a hoot, because somebody told us that we weren't, and we actually believed that. Like whether it was a teacher or a parent that was nutritionally deficient and feeling badly that day, and etc.
Well, that's what all of Chicken Soup's about. Is Jack and I totally, absolutely believe that every human soul's been underestimated, that we need to reprogram ourselves to I'm enough. You got to say it 50 to 100 times a day, because most of us don't feel tall enough or short enough or rich enough or self-confident enough or wealthy enough or friendly enough or whatever it is. And we got to come back into control emotionally and then spiritually, that you are here and I'm here to make a difference, and that we are coded at DNA and RNA at birth to make this difference. But you've got to be physically well so you can be mentally well, so you can get your spirit to go take you to your genius levels.
It's pretty hard to be spiritual and to your genius levels and the higher ethers, etc., and helping other people if you're toxic in your colon.
Exactly.
But once you start getting detoxified in your colon, then you feel better, and when you feel better, your colon will work better, because your mind runs your body. There's a little gland inside your brain called the pituitary gland that from the hypothalamus to the pituitary gland to the thyroid stimulating hormone. The thyroid is run from your mind, as is your parathyroid, your thymus, your adrenal glands, your ovaries or your testicles in men, or ovaries in ladies. So your whole endocrine system is run from your mind through prostaglandin release. We know the names of the hormones and everything. So this is not a theory. Like when doctors say it's all in your head and go see your psychiatrist, he actually was right on. A lot of it is in our heads. And so we have to get that holistic approach. And, in my clinic, I might mention this. Generally speaking, ladies don't think it's proper for them to love themselves. They give to everybody else in the family. They're usually the super achievers that get this chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, because they go down the furthest. Because they think it's their absolute necessity in life is to help their children, help their husband, help their careers, go to the church, go to the school, be on the PTA, and if that isn't enough, we'll go volunteer some more. And the red light is flashing, their tank's empty, and they don't think that it's right for them to love themselves. And all you ladies out there, please, just take some time out for yourself. Think about this. I often coach my ladies this. What is more important, your children or you and your health? The most important thing in your life is your health. Because when I'm talking about health, I'm talking about those 4 healths, the holistic health. Now,
If you take care of you can take better care of your kids. And
Oh,
in the
that's the
Christian
point.
model,
Exactly.
Christ said, love your neighbor as yourself, which means you got to love you positively and correctly before you can love someone else.
Exactly. If ladies could just take that concept and love themselves and fill their tank back up and give to their children holistically again everything, then we wouldn't have these dysfunctional families, etc.
Precisely. Okay, so we've talked about control. Number 2, what is Herring's law of the 4 healing principles?
Herring's law is a law where you heal from the top down, from the inside out in reverse order, and we've talked about some of that. Top down means mostly that control and how your mind runs your body, because we are energetic and biochemical. We're not just a blob of cells sitting there biochemically to be evaluated with blood and urine tests. That's a biochemical model. I study people using quantum physics. Okay, I measure their meridians. I actually, in my clinic, I have a machine that measures energy flow down meridians. So we are energetic and biochemical. So it's very, very important that you heal from the top down. And that is part of that control.
Let me just even talk to that.
Yeah.
As a quantum physicist, student of quantum physics, and Dr. Deepak Chopra, who I think is the best medical doctor on this, he says the minute you say stuff like I'm healthy at a quantum level, the quarks, bosons, leptons suddenly change coloration and they go back to healthy. So it behooves us to talk ourselves into being healthy. I mean, it sounds inane, it sounds childish, but it's nothing like that at all. It's one of the greatest things you can do for yourself, saying, I wake up every morning and say, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm joyous, I'm successful, I'm prosperous. I'm going to have a wonderful day today.
Affirmations.
Go ahead.
All of that. Absolutely. That's part of that mind-body connection. And these are things that people listening on this tape, they can go out and get, Mark. But this is really, really, really simple. And then once they get into the track, it's beautiful. You can read books. I can read your book. I love reading your books. And then we can go read Chopra's work. It's fantastic. And then you can go on a journey, and that's the beauty. Then you're not a hypochondriac. You're not worrying about your health. You're on a journey, and you enjoy
infinitely better health.
Exactly, and you enjoy the change. Now, part of Herring's law is the top down. Remember, inside out means large intestine first. So we always start with a large intestine. So that's why Nature's Tea or Classic Tea in Canada and Live Fiber have risen to the top, because it's following the laws. Your large intestine is the first thing you always work with. And then the next thing is that you heal the most recent things that have happened to you in reverse order. So you go back to your childhood problems last, and you heal the most
chronic stuff last. Tell me about the cowboy story. You told me this
I
while we
told
were on
you
our
that
7-mile walk when we were in Kona, Hawaii.
Yeah, I live in Alberta here, and I had a fellow come to my clinic from about 100 miles away, and he'd been busted 29 times, Doc. And I said, busted? Yeah, he says, I got a plastic neck, I got a plastic knee. He was a rodeo star, and he broke this, broke that, broke this. And he says, I just bought a bunch of horses that I got to break, and they told me I'd never walk, but I'm going to break those horses, and you're going to help me. And so I said, well, we'll try and do that. So we gave him some products that would help regenerate and start to recycle on the joints. What happened to him, Mark, is he started to heal, and he came back into me about 30 days later, and he was starting to heal pretty hard. And he says, I'm going through pain. So I started to teach him that he's going to start going through 3 days of pain if he gets a real healing. Dr. Jensen, Bernard Jensen, has all that in his work. And so he started to do that, and I kept going. Well, by the second time he came back, this is about 60 days now, he walked in, sat down, looked at me, and we were pretty good buddies by this time. And I grew up on a ranch, and I can talk cowboy talk with the best of them. And he says, he sat there and looked at me, and he says, Doc, I says, what? He says, I'm going to lay a whooping on you. I said, a whooping? How come? He says, pain. He says, that's not the problem. He says, you taught me where it was going to hurt next. So you see, his right shoulder would be hurting, and then all of a sudden he knew that in maybe a week his left knee was going to hurt. But he says, you know what, Doc? I woke up in a kind of a nightmare sweat one night, and I could smell the paint on that Denver surgery suite. I could see the walls, and I could see the nurse. I woke up, and I could smell all of that time that bull got me and gored me and got my intestinal tract out and all of that. So he went through all of those healings back, all the way back, and he knew one after another when he had broken which part first by which rodeo at which point. And so it was really interesting for me to watch that. It was very clear to me, Herring's law in that case.
Take me through the next one, dynamic regeneration.
Well, we are dynamic. That's the 7 million cells. So the point being is if we are dynamic, and I never even finished that, if you break your leg, it will heal and you can run out in 6 weeks. That's because you get new bone cells. So obviously, if you're getting new bone cells, the old ones have to go away, or we would just get larger and larger and larger. So there's remodeling going on constantly.
There's a pattern integrity, Bucky Fuller always used to say.
Exactly. So we are constantly dynamically changing our cells, aren't we?
Now, let
But
me
at
add to
different
that,
at different speeds. You see, our mind is the slowest. Our neurons are 7 years to recycle in our eyeballs, but we can get into the lining of the intestinal tract, which is every 9 days. You get a new liver every 5 weeks. So that being the point, the whole point is that we are dynamic. Now clients have not only control, but they have direction to go. If they can make the cells that are replacing the old cells healthier, what's going to happen? You're going to constantly regenerate. Now, if you're regenerating, Mark, you can't be degenerating. You can't do both at the same time. So take control. Start the regeneration process by detoxifying all the cells of your body, starting with your large intestine, work through the liver, get the kidneys working, get your bloodstream clean, and start a major detoxification with high-level nutrition. And you're going to start the regeneration process, and we want to do it on the weakest organs first, called the large intestine. Dynamically have control to regenerate. We do not have to insidiously, year after year after year after year,
go downhill.
Toxify a little tiny bit every day, and after 20 or 30 years, degenerate downhill. We can, instead of toxifying constantly, we can detoxify and get higher level nutrition at the cellular level and regenerate. I am younger metabolically today at 50 than I was when I was 39.
So am I, thanks to the last 2
Thank
years
you.
of good
Excellent.
herbs. Let me add the other thing I wanted to add, and that was that you can visualize yourself back to high levels of health. And I was down in Cancun, Mexico one time, and we were out on a catamaran every day, and I got a deep sunburn, and we visualized myself out of a 3rd-degree burn. But we had an orthopod as one of the 15 people hanging out with us, and he takes people in a cast, and he has them visualize and gives them the x-rays so they can heal in half the time.
Yes.
And what happens is they literally do, because the mind, top down,
Yes.
the mind controls the body, and it can do it. And if you read books like Mutant Message from Down Under,
Yes.
obviously the real people, which every Indian tribe around the world calls themselves, can do instantaneous healings. Now, that is not in the North American medical model,
No.
so don't go trying that.
Right, and it's not in my repertoire.
It's not mine
I'm
either.
a very scientific, down-to-earth guy.
I know, but I love knowing that it's
But I'd love
available
to know
to
about
another
that.
healer.
Yes, exactly.
And I'd like to get under those guys' energy orbit to learn that.
Exactly.
The 4th point of healing, then, emotional, spiritual, social, physical.
We talked about that earlier. So we have to heal all 4 of them all together. In other words, if you're emotionally distraught, it's pretty hard to get physical or physical healing, etc. We talked about that.
The next thing we're going to talk about is 4 steps. We got to detox first. We've talked about that in depth. Cellular nutrition and regeneration.
Now that's really important, because a lot of people say, when I ask them, how's your digestion? Well, I get a little burping and a little heartburn. They don't really connect digestion with, and when they have food
And absorption.
Yes, because food has to be digested, absorbed, assimilated, utilized through the portal vein. It has to go across the cell walls, get into the mitochondria, and it has to actually have Krebs cycle enzymes to get energy. So when people say, I'm tired, some people actually get a label put on them called chronic fatigue, and the doctor says, you got chronic fatigue. I've had clients come to me, Doc, I now know what's wrong. I got CFS, I got chronic fatigue syndrome. I said, that doesn't mean anything. It just means you're real tired. Ask the doctor what causes chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, what does cause chronic fatigue syndrome is toxins blocking enzymes.
And most doctors don't know that.
I feel like I was trained incorrectly, Mark. I feel very sad that when I was young that I should have been trained in health, not in disease therapy.
Yep.
And I was trained in disease therapy. Our doctors, most doctors are extremely hardworking. They're extremely moral. They're trying their best, but the whole system's wrong because they're not trained in health and in nutrition enough. They're trained in disease therapy.
Correct.
So we're not bashing doctors. We're just saying, doctors, come on over. And in this province in Alberta here, the doctors are moving rapidly to complementary health. They're learning acupuncture. They're paying, provincially, they're paying MDs to become acupuncturists now. 15 years ago, they thought it was quackery.
Well,
Now,
the whole system's in a paradigm shift.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift. So we need our doctors to come and help us with health, not just disease.
And they're going to end up being our greatest advocates and
exactly.
friends. The weakest organ we've already talked about. Stress control. Take me through stress control.
Well, that's a cellular term that can get really blasé, and we can get off on tangents and all that kind of thing. Stress is really clear in my world of trying to help health. If you're stressed constantly, you cannot digest, Mark, because your intestinal tract, as an example, is constantly in the sympathetic mode. Now, there's always a balance in your body. Your heart runs automatically without you telling it to pump, 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 as does your digestion. Voluntary arm movement is voluntary, but there's an autonomic system, and it's broken into 2 halves, a parasympathetic and a sympathetic. Quite simply, the sympathetic is the fight and flight, and the parasympathetic is rest and digest. Now, if you are eating a Big Mac in a car, in traffic, with a cellular phone in your ear, you are not resting
while you're digesting, and your sympathetic nervous system is in control, and you are not digesting. You can't even have digestive enzymes come out of the cells with the sympathetic nervous system in control. So when you're stressed constantly, you're going to run a nutritional deficiency. So stress is extremely important to control. How do you control it? Well, I can't control my clients' stresses around them, whether it's children or a husband or whatever, or a bunch of things. What I can do is teach them how to take back control of their health and teach them. And once they got control of their health, they calm down, because knowledge is power. Once you have the knowledge of your health, you aren't stressed. I have constantly stressed clients because they've been to 15 doctors and had 15 different drugs or whatever, gone to specialists, etc. So what I do is I sit down and I show them how they can get out of the frustration, take back control, and then the stress drops. Now, one of the biggest things that we have to do is when we start getting healthy is get your large intestine healthy. When you do, you create lots of B vitamins and neurotransmitters in your intestinal tract, and your mind starts to run better. If you're depressed or stressed or getting headaches, you look to your large intestine immediately, because that's where it usually is coming from. And if you want to get specific, headaches in the sinuses and the frontal parts is transverse colon. So get your large intestine healthy. I've had more people get rid of headaches just by getting their large intestine healthy. So stress control is a key one right there.
Well, let's talk about how much classic or nature's tea they ought to take and how much life fiber. Because one of the things you said is that some people say to me, but it's got sen in it, and what if I become dependent? Talk to that.
Well, first of all, there's always a lobby, isn't there? With a $940 billion industry out there on the side, they're always lobbying with lots of money, telling us against natural things. Senna has been used for thousands of years, and I guess let's say that we even could become dependent on it. It is better to be dependent on Senna, in my opinion, so that you need to take this tea all of the time to keep your colon working, because the benefit of moving the colon is far, far greater. I don't believe Senna is a big problem, but everything in moderation. And in Canada here we have a tea called classic tea that has no Senna in it. But to answer your question, how much, you use as much as I call it titering. You use as much tea as you need to have 3 bowel movements a day. Now, all civilizations around the world that are healthy have 3 bowel movements a day. So if you're having 1 every 3 days or 1 every day, move it up to 3 a day. But that's not what live fiber and classic tea do, although that's what we do. We take more and more tea, and we take live fiber I recommend live fiber actually at 1 teaspoon 3 times a day rather than 1 scoop a day, if a client can do that without a hassle. The reason being is your intestinal tract is rather continuous, and it's better than having 1 bolus going through, is to have 3 spread out. It works better.
Well, take us forward here. So now we've got a large, clean intestine. We're starting to detox ourselves. What happens next?
Well, once you start to detoxify, let's get some cellular nutrition. And let's talk about nutrition. You know, I love nutrition. I trust nutrition, but I got rather frustrated with just nutrition, because the point being, if you have all of the vitamins and minerals and you're taking all those supplements, Mark, if you don't have detoxification and your enzymes available, they get blocked. So what we want to do is get the detoxification with our herbs, and then we want high-level nutrition. And the point being is, we talked about stress. If you're stressed, you can't digest enough food. Our food chain is absolutely deficient in nutrients, and I'll talk to that in a minute. And so there's another reason. And when you're toxic on top of that, your enzymes get blocked, so you can't digest. So no wonder that we have huge nutritional deficiencies in North America. Huge.
And most people don't even know they
We're
exist.
overweight because we have cravings, because we are starving to death at a cellular level, and we don't understand it as we plow food down our throat. You see, we're putting lots of food down our throat with empty calories, but we're not getting enough nutrition at a cellular level. If we didn't, we wouldn't have the cravings.
Interesting.
Yes.
Talk to us about the nutrition.
Okay.
Most of the soil's a little deficient.
Oh yes, I went to Imperial Valley in your state, and you should do that sometime and go see where they grow the broccoli and cauliflower and everything. And there's about a 1/4 inch of white salt on top of that land because of the irrigation and evaporation and all of the salt. And so what's happening is we are basically got our soils down to what they are now is a physical media to hold the roots.
And what happens
And
is
we're
the
using-
worms won't even go into it anymore because it's been too petrochemicalized.
Exactly. The worms can't live. The bugs can't live. The microflora isn't there. And you see what's happening is we've gone down a very, very bad road, because what's happening is we are now dependent on nitrogen, phosphorus, and these anhydrous ammonia tanks that run through the land. The anhydrous ammonia, when they put that right in the soil, it just kills the microflora on contact immediately. Now we need all of that microflora in the soils and the worms, etc., for aeration and to trap nitrogen in the air and put it in the soil. We need all of those bacteria on our legumes or legumes, depending on how you pronounce it.
Right.
They actually get little nodules called rhizomes in their root systems that actually trap nitrogen in the air. The point being, our whole nutritional profile is sadly lacking compared to what it was 20 and 30 years ago. In addition, our grandfathers and grandmothers didn't have to put up with the toxins that your parents did, and our children are putting up with far more toxins. Why? Because we're toxifying with pesticides, herbicides. All of these are going on the land. My dad is only 75. Mark, when he was a child on the farm, they didn't have fertilizers on the land, on that ranch. It's 6 sections, my dad's ranch. 6 sections of ground. They didn't have a fertilizer. It was just manure on the land, and everything natural. Now, everything's fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides in one generation. Now,
So in one generation, we can flip it back by people like you and I who are talking about it, thinking about it, and then people will start to insist that we start having organic healthy, live foods, so we get a live body rather than dead food and have dead cells.
Sure. And when the public understands, like they are, that the health model is wrong and that we need to get into the health model, they also understand that our nutritional big food company chain production is not working for us. They're not feeding us. They are trying to make the most money they can for their shareholders, Mark.
But they could make more money by doing it holistically if they really paid attention.
Yes, some people are now doing that, Mark.
In the business.
I've got a farmer friend of mine about 40 miles from here. He makes more money than any farmer in the whole district. And for 35 years, they can guarantee there's never even been fertilizer on their land. Everything's organic. And by the way, you know what he does? I introduced him to the president of Enrich, and they supply him organic elk antler. You know, it's not, and Ken Brailsford could have bought elk antler in this province that was non-organic, and that man so ethical, he paid hundreds of thousands of dollars more to buy organic, and I know that, and very few people do, because I was the one that did the business plan that got him the supply, and that's one of the reasons that I trust Enrich, because they know. They're wise enough to know that, yes, you pay for the organic. Because
but you operate in integrity and you stay in integrity and you get integrity.
Yes, exactly.
Now, at the very beginning, you said that today, with good nutrition, we can get rid of heart disease and strokes, diabetes, Parkinson, and Alzheimer's. Would you mind hitting a lick on each one of those? Also, obesity.
Yes, well, obesity, what is obesity? But we talked about that. It's cravings. It's cravings because you're nutritionally deficient. When the last thing you want to do when you're obese is get on a diet. Because when you're on a diet, you're starving yourself of nutrition and calories, both. You're setting your metabolic rest points, metabolic rate at a lower and lower set point, we call it. So you're metabolically, I actually have clients that count their calories diligently, eat 1,000 calories a day and can't lose a pound, Mark, because their metabolic rate is so low. Now, by the same
token, this new Chito-rich product has totally changed. I've had people that have said, I've tried every diet, and now I'm losing 5 pounds a week.
Yes, but we don't want to use that as just a panacea. We still want to use live fiber and classic tea or nature's tea in the United States with the Chito-rich in an effort to get the large intestine healthy, because the point being, we can lose weight, yes, by getting the fat burden down, and Chito-rich is a fantastic product used properly. By that I mean you need your essential fatty acids in the morning and your fat-soluble vitamins, lots of them in the morning, so that you get your high-quality fats up, and then the Chito-rich will take the bad fats out. And that's all done nicely by the company. I was so proud of the company because they came in and explained how to use that Chito-rich properly.
Isn't that neat?
Oh, yeah.
So read the book and listen to the tape the company has.
But for weight, getting back to that, what we want to do is get our metabolic rates up so we get healthier. We detoxify and our enzymes start to function. And then when you take food in, you burn it. Just like the guy that eats 2 platefuls of food and he's a skinny little rat that we all don't like.
Yeah.
We want to become more like that by having high metabolic rates. That's what Enrich allows us to do, to get so healthy that you can't be overweight. That's the point.
So your metabolic rate will change once you detox.
Oh, absolutely. Because your Krebs cycle starts firing and your enzymes start firing and your food goes in and turns to energy instead of storage.
Perfect. Now tell me about the heart disease and strokes.
Well, heart disease and strokes is no more than fat. Chito-rich is going to help us a lot there. Fat and cholesterol, etc. But you know, cholesterol is just the symptom. It's not the cause. The cause is toxins, free radical damage on the blood vessels, and cholesterol is no more than the body's defense mechanism to go in and coat the blood vessels. But when they coat for too long, Mark, what happens if the original cause isn't corrected? And that's toxins. So we detoxify the body, and you know, one of my favorite products with Enrich is Life Path. LifePath is a product that stops free radical damage at a very high level, and then we need our vitamin E and vitamin C. And when Enrich makes a vitamin C, they make a vitamin C, and we all know the 7.
Synchron 7 has just got
incredible.
It just finishes everything
Yes.
that Linus Pauling was doing and
Yes.
got 2 Nobel Prizes for. It's got all the cruciferous vegetables, which are the vegetables across like broccoli and cauliflower and all that.
You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to just finish on that vitamin C with Enrich, just to let
We
people.
can't finish just with that. We got to do just a quick overview, a
okay.
lick of heart and
Perfect.
stroke.
Let me talk about vitamin C just a little
Okay.
bit. Okay. When a biochemist makes us L-ascorbic acid, and we buy L-ascorbic acid real cheap at the grocery
Yep.
store, when we buy it, it's pure L-ascorbic acid chemically made.
And the body can't absorb it.
And they say your body can't tell the difference because biochemically, he's a biochemist. He's not trying to lie, but he's only looking at your body biochemically. Now, when you take...
When I listen to your tape, though, here's the problem, is that
Yes.
when I was in graduate school in physiology, what we discovered was we know how to make water, but the fish won't live in the water. Same
Exactly.
with that.
Exactly. Yeah, nature...
Knows something we
orange
don't know.
juice, yeah, it knows everything. But what Enrich knows is make it natural and make it a complex. And when it's natural, if you look under quantum physics with Kirlian photography, it glows, Mark. When you look under L-ascorbic acid synthetically made,
It doesn't glow.
it's dead. That's the point. So I always had an opinion that natural was better than synthetic. Now there's a science to prove it. It's physics, not biochemistry. It's really exciting when you understand that. It goes boom. And that's what Enrich is. All their products are 100% natural. That's why one of the reasons it works. Plus their formulas are fantastic. The quality control of their products is incredible because you need all of that. With biological products, the quality control has to be there.
Talk to me about heart and stroke, about the 3 products that just about everybody can help with.
Okay,
Cardio Plus,
well-
CoQ10, and MaxKill.
Yes, and I might just mention that they're coming out with calcium, magnesium,
For better
manganese.
absorption.
Yes, and anybody that has any problems out there at all with heart problems, angina, make sure you're taking adequate quantities of magnesium. And Enrich has this brand new product out that they did an excellent job. I could spend half an hour talking about how good that formula is.
How about diabetes?
Diabetes is again, there's different kinds of diabetes and juvenile and adult onset, etc. But generally speaking, obesity, toxins, pancreatic stress, it's not just lack of insulin. It's complex. I'm not an expert on diabetes, but the body is. See, that's the whole point. I always get back to that. The body's smart, and we don't need to know. We don't need to know that it's glucagon antagonism and not insulin, and it's over and all that. I mean, that's all. I've read all that, studied all that, and done that for 30 years. The point being that the body's smart. Do exactly what we're saying. All of these chronic diseases follow the same principles.
Parkinson's too?
Well, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and those things, that's the point. You must prevent those diseases because the recycling speed of the cells of the neurons are so slow, 7 years, and you're quite often elderly when you get these diseases.
Well,
or
like
cellular
Alzheimer's,
dysfunctions,
the
yeah.
video that I saw, and I hope everybody out there watches a monthly video and gets it from somebody who's a manager or buys it from the company, but the fine doctor in the company was saying starting at 45, all of us need to take ginkgo, and that'll
Sure.
just prevent
yes.
it.
Yes.
I wish we could get it to...
And LifePath, I might add.
Yeah.
LifePath crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it's a very strong antioxidant to help prevent toxins, and that's important.
Any specific herb on Parkinson's?
No. That's
Okay, just the same stuff. Okay,
Yes.
Any final concluding thing? Otherwise, I want us to give our phone numbers respectively, and then I got one final story to summarize it. Any other points you want to make?
I'd like to thank Jim and Audrey Shipka for inviting me to get started with an idea of a cassette, and I'd like to thank you for getting me as energetic as you have.
Well, I think the world of you, as you know. If anyone wants to call and play this game in my group, just call my office at 1-800-433-2393 and talk to Paula Childers. And if you're in California, it's 714-646-5027. And again, Paula Childers, Childers, and she'll help you. Only because I'm on the road so much, it's much better you talk to her. And your phone number, Dr. Brian?
Area code 403-448-1646 is my private line in my clinic, and I'd
And if
prefer
they
to
can't
have
get to you, who do they talk to?
then they go 448-0875 and take a message with if I'm with clients, which is often the case, my receptionist will always take a message and I'll get back to them.
Perfect. I'm going to finish with a story from Chicken Soup for the Soul because some of you out there are saying, holy cow, this is overwhelming. And what we try to do is say, go the way of Nature's Tea in the U.S. and Classic Tea in Canada and Life Fiber. Those are 2 different elements, but they're the get going, get started program. And if you like that, you're going to become a student and you'll start talking to other people in the business and do wonders. And you say, but the world's so big and I'm so little, there's nothing I can do. Well, Jack and I have a great friend who happens to be in the cookie business, and his name's Wally Famous Amos, and he gave us a story called the Star Thrower Story. And there's a young man walking down a beach in the early morning, and he keeps picking up starfish and throwing them into the sea. Well, a little old man monitors this early in the morning, and he's out on his constitutional, walks up to the young kid, grabs his left shoulder, flips him around, looks him dead center in the eye, and says, "Young man, you're wasting your time." He says, "Why is that, old man?" He said, "Because there must be tens of thousands of starfish incinerating in the early morning rays of the sun. There's nothing you can do." Whereupon the young man winked at him, dropped down, picked up another starfish, and says, "Old boy, it makes all the difference to this one." Where Brian and I are coming from is we think this tape can make all the difference to you. Except we don't want you to stop it with you. If you're building a business in Enrich like both of us are, we humbly, respectfully, and encouragingly ask you to share this tape with a friend. Have them listen in one day, have them give it back to you, and then share it with 3 more friends. And if they want to make a copy and get it out, what our humble goal is that we want 100% of the people to regain as full of health as they can and get as detoxified in any given instant as they can and go, as Brian always says, towards Olympian health. And that's even more than the Olympians have. We wish for you every good thing that you wish for yourself. Thanks again for listening to Dr. Brian Carpenter, and I'm your friend, Mark Victor Hansen. Thank you.